I was driving home on a cool autumn night, the air crisp and laden with the scent of fallen leaves, when I first noticed it, a single, glaring tail light in my rearview mirror that refused to fade, even as I pressed harder on the accelerator. At first, I dismissed it as a stray car lost in the darkness, but as mile after mile slipped by, that unyielding red glow remained fixed on me, mirroring my every twist and turn. My pulse raced as I realized that no matter how many lanes I changed or sudden exits I took, the light stayed there, a silent predator stalking its prey. The highway was eerily deserted, the only sounds the steady hum of my engine and the whisper of wind through a cracked window. I tried to convince myself that perhaps the driver was simply lost, but every glance in the mirror confirmed my growing dread. That tail light burned with an intensity that felt deliberate, as if it were marking me for something I couldn't yet understand. After what felt like an eternity of this unsettling pursuit, I finally reached a long stretch of highway lined with abandoned service plazas. Hoping for safety, I pulled into one of the near-empty lots. I parked my car beneath a flickering street lamp and stepped out into the cool night, my hands trembling as I fumbled for my phone. With a shaky voice, I dialed 911 and described how a mysterious car had been tailing me relentlessly. The operator's calm reassurances did little to ease the oppressive silence that surrounded me. Just as I began to feel a semblance of safety from the arriving police, the nightmare escalated. From the darkness, the relentless tail light suddenly burst into a blinding glare as the mysterious car slowed, then pulled up parallel to my vehicle. My heart hammered in my chest as I saw the driver, hidden behind tinted windows, slowly roll down his own window. In an instant, the door of his car swung open, and a shadowy figure stepped out. Before I could react, he began pounding on my driver's side window with a metal object. The sound of shattering glass filled the air, and I knew in that terrifying moment that his intent was far more sinister than mere intimidation. He wanted to rob me, or worse, and my life. Instinct took over. I slammed my foot on the brake and ducked down, scrambling under the dashboard, praying that my car's interior would offer enough cover. For what felt like endless seconds, I remained frozen, my body trembling as the assailant's furious blows echoed against the glass. I could hear his heavy breathing and the scrabbling of his feet as he attempted to force his way inside. Just then, the distant wail of sirens grew louder, slicing through the chaos. In those agonizing minutes, every second stretched out as if in slow motion. I held my breath, every nerve on edge, until finally, flashing blue lights burst onto the scene. The would-be attacker cursed and retreated back to his car as police vehicles screeched into the service plaza. Officers quickly swarmed the area, and within moments, the assailant was detained. Though the terror of that night still lingers in my memory, the intervention of the police brought a bittersweet relief. The incident, though never fully explained, served as a stark reminder that sometimes the most disturbing threats aren't supernatural, they're all too human, lurking just out of sight on a dark, empty highway. Now, whenever I drive at night, I remain ever vigilant, knowing that in the midst of darkness, survival often depends on quick reflexes and the courage to fight for your life. Story 2. It was a bitter, rain-soaked night when I decided to take a shortcut along a desolate stretch of highway, a route local drivers typically avoid for fear of trouble. After hours on the road, weighed down by exhaustion and a desperate yearning for home, I navigated a narrow bend and spotted a lone figure by the roadside. He stood in the downpour, thumb extended, his soaked clothes clinging to his frame, and his face hidden beneath a low, shadowed hood. Against every instinct screaming at me to keep going, I pulled over. He climbed into the back seat without a word, his silence as heavy as the rain. At first, his quiet demeanor was unnerving but not entirely unexpected. After all, many drivers have picked up solitary, troubled souls. However, as we merged back onto the slick highway, an oppressive tension began to fill the cramped space. The only sounds were the relentless drumming of rain on the roof and the steady murmur of the windshield wipers. I tried to spark conversation, asking where he was headed, but he offered only clipped monosyllables and vague gestures. His eyes, occasionally catching the light from passing street lamps, burned with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. The further we drove, the stranger his behavior became. At one point, he slowly produced a crumpled, water-stained piece of paper and, in a low, gravelly voice, muttered, "Don't trust the night. They're out there." I couldn't tell if he was reciting some urban legend or speaking from personal horror, but his tone left me chilled. My heart pounded as I realized this wasn't just another lonely ride, it was a forewarning of imminent danger. The darkness outside seemed to press in, making every moment stretch into an eternity. Then, in a split-second twist, the atmosphere shifted from eerie to menacing. As I fumbled for my phone to call 911, the hitchhiker's eyes snapped toward me. In an instant, his hand lunged toward the door, and he slammed it open. Before I could react, he leapt into the front passenger seat, his grip wrenching the steering wheel away from me. A violent struggle ensued inside the car, his desperate, ragged breaths clashed with mine as I fought to regain control. I could feel my heart pounding in my ears as we wrestled, the sound of the rain intensifying the chaos. My phone slipped from my grasp, clattering onto the wet floor, and for a terrifying few seconds, I was locked in a battle for my life. Just when the situation seemed utterly hopeless, the distant wail of sirens cut through the clamor. Flashing blue lights illuminated the car's interior as I managed to break free and slam my foot onto the accelerator, forcing the assailant to release his grip in a moment of shock. In a final desperate move, he flung himself out of the car into the downpour. I pulled over onto the shoulder, trembling uncontrollably, as police cruisers converged on my location. Later, officers confirmed that multiple drivers had reported a hitchhiker with a similar disturbing warning, a troubled man whose actions that night almost turned a quiet ride into a fight for survival. Though the terror of that encounter still haunts me, the fact that I survived and can now recount the experience brings a bittersweet relief. I now avoid that deserted route and trust my instincts implicitly, knowing that sometimes a quiet, rain-soaked ride can hide life or death danger behind a seemingly silent face. Story 3: I never imagined that a routine drive on the interstate could spiral into a heart-pounding nightmare, but one cold winter night proved otherwise. I was on a long-haul journey home, the highway stretching endlessly beneath a slate-gray sky, when I encountered a long-forgotten toll booth, a relic with shattered glass and dark, empty booths that exuded an eerie, abandoned aura. My GPS inexplicably rerouted me through this desolate area, and as I neared the toll plaza, an unsettling chill crept over me, amplified by the heavy scent of oil and rust in the air. Compelled by a mix of curiosity and a nagging sense of duty to report any oddities, I slowed down as I passed the derelict toll plaza. In that moment, I caught sight of movement, a shadowy figure darting between the decrepit booths. My instincts screamed that something was terribly wrong. I pulled into the nearest service area, my pulse quickening as I parked and stepped out into the biting wind. The toll booth, once a hub of activity, now stood as a silent monument to neglect, its broken sign creaking in the gusts like a distant, desperate warning. I moved cautiously toward the structure, every step echoing in the oppressive silence. Among scattered debris, I discovered unsettling evidence, a fresh set of footprints in the mud, a discarded glove, and even remnants of a half-eaten sandwich. It became clear that this place wasn't just an abandoned relic, it was a secret meeting point, the likely staging ground for illicit activities. My heart pounded as I pieced together the scene, a clandestine rendezvous for criminals, hidden from prying eyes along the lonely highway. Before I could process the disturbing clues, the roar of an engine shattered the stillness. I barely had time to dive behind an old service desk as a battered pickup truck screeched to a halt near the toll booth. Two men emerged from the truck, faces concealed by dark hats and heavy jackets, and moved with a sense of urgent menace. Their hushed conversation, filled with phrases like the drop and a quick exit, sent a surge of adrenaline through me. I froze in place, my breath coming in shallow gasps as I watched them rummage through the area, gathering supplies from the truck, a roll of duct tape, several heavy bags, and a portable radio. It became painfully clear that they were orchestrating something dangerous, perhaps a robbery or an elaborate diversion along the highway. Panic surged as I realized my car was parked far too far away to offer a quick escape. I crept backward, every shadow and rustle magnifying my fear of being discovered. Then, in a moment that stretched into an agonizing eternity, one of the men stepped away from the truck and began moving directly toward where I was hidden. I could almost feel the cold grip of impending danger as I pressed myself against the service desk, heart hammering in my chest. My hands trembled uncontrollably as I dialed 911, my voice barely a whisper as I provided my exact location and described the unfolding threat. In the tense moments that followed, I heard the crunch of footsteps drawing nearer, and the man's hushed tones became more urgent. Just as my pulse threatened to drown out all other sound, the distant wail of sirens burst into the night. The intruders froze for a split second, their eyes widening in panic as flashing blue lights flooded the area. Seizing the opportunity, I bolted from my hiding spot and sprinted to my car, all the while glancing back in terror. Within minutes, police vehicles converged on the scene. The pickup truck's engine roared to life as the men scrambled, but the flashing lights and shouts of officers forced them to retreat. Later, authorities confirmed that a string of break-ins and highway robberies had been linked to that abandoned toll booth area. Though the terror of that night still lingers, knowing that the police intervened in time brings a measure of relief. The experience has left me with a heightened awareness of the unexpected dangers that can lurk in even the most abandoned corners of the highway, a stark reminder that sometimes survival hinges on quick instincts and the courage to fight for your life until safety arrives.